Welcome back, Careblazer. Are you ready to continue talking about getting to the bottom of your loved one's difficult behaviors? Last week I did a video on all of the important information to track to get to the bottom of your loved one's behavior, and now in this video we're going to talk about what to do with all that information. So let's say you've been gathering some information about what's going on when your loved one has this behavior and there's no clear pattern jumping out to you. What do we do from here? This is where we're going to jump into the action stage. So if you consider last week's video and the free worksheet, that was kind of the surveillance stage. We're just kind of surveying the scene. Now we're going to take some action and do something about it. So I have a new worksheet for you today. That's also free and downloadable for you below this video. And it's going to be the action stage. This is where we're going to take the information we know and we're going to do something about it. So for starters, you have to remind yourself, what is the behavior we're focusing on now? So in last week's example, we used the example of the loved one yelling and throwing the remote when you walked into the living room and opened up a curtain, right? So remind yourself of the behavior, and it's always good to work on one behavior at a time. All right, now what you're going to do is you're going to take your worksheet and you're going to go to brainstorming. You're going to brainstorm all the possible reasons your loved one could have done what they did. And the important thing here, Careblazer, is that you want to be looking at it through your loved one's eyes, thinking about being somebody with a lot of memory impairment or hearing impairment or visual impairment, whatever it is that your loved one is struggling with, or true physical conditions your loved one has. You want to try to view it from their mindset versus our mindset. Like if it was my mindset, I might be like, that was just rude. He didn't want me to interrupt him or something. But like really get into your loved one's head and try to think, what are all the possible reasons? Do not censor yourself here, Careblazer. Challenge yourself to come up with at least 25 different reasons. Don't block anything out. It seriously could be something that makes no sense to any of us, but it's what triggered your loved one. It's what makes sense in their world. So for example, if we're using the example of me walking in through the living room to open up a curtain and my loved one yells at me, says the neighbor's spying on me, throws a remote at me, I have to ask myself, what are all the reasons this happened? I could think, okay, well, I covered up part of the screen when I walked in through the living room. I said hi to him and made a couple of comments, and maybe that interrupted his TV watching and he didn't like it. I opened up the curtain and maybe he likes it darker when he's watching the TV. Maybe he thought I was going to come in and stop the TV. Maybe he thought I was going to ask him to go do something different. Maybe he thought I wanted him to change the channel. Anything. Maybe he thought, maybe it was right before lunch. It was right before lunch. You know what? And maybe he was hungry. Maybe seeing me was a trigger that he was hungry and he didn't have any food, right? Just anything at all that comes to the top of your head. Maybe when I walked in, I did walk in pretty quickly. Maybe I walked in really fast and he was wondering why I'm in such a rush, that something was going on. Maybe I looked stressed or mad and that triggered him, right? Just write it all down. Brainstorming here. All right, so in the second step, what we're going to do is we're going to explore. I want you to choose one of your brainstorming ideas, and you're going to focus on that one in the explore section. So let's say in the explore section, I think it was because I walked in the room in front of him while I was talking, and I think that was really hard for him because I interrupted his show, and with the visual and auditory changes in dementia, I think that was just too much for him to handle. Okay, so now I have my hypothesis, I have my suspicion. Now here are the questions you're going to ask yourself after you've brainstormed a bunch of ideas and then you've explored, you're going to choose one of those brainstorming ideas. The first question you're going to ask yourself is, how will I change my approach? Based on my suspicion that it was because it was too much noise and visual interruption, what am I going to do to change my approach? In this situation, I would probably walk behind him, make sure I'm not cutting in front of his field of vision, and I would be sure not to talk while I come in the room. That would be one way I would change the approach. So the second question you're going to ask yourself is, how am I going to change the environment? So you want to ask yourself, based on my assumption that it was the visual interruption and auditory interruption? Is there anything I can do to change the environment? And in this case, yeah, perhaps I would move the recliner 2 feet forward from the wall so that when I come into the living room, I can walk behind it instead of in front of it. That would be a way to test this out and to change the environment to really know if that's part of the reason. Okay, now you want to ask yourself, again, we haven't even done anything yet. We're just writing down our plan. Now you want to ask yourself, what am I going to do if my attempt, if what I try doesn't change the behavior, if the behavior keeps happening? I love this question because what it does is it sets you up beforehand to realize that sometimes we don't solve it on the first attempt. Sometimes it takes multiple attempts, and that's okay. So rather than trying something, it not change the behavior and getting discouraged and thinking that there's nothing that can be done to change the behavior, this question actually gets you thinking, okay, what am I going to do if what I try to do doesn't work? What am I going to do? You're already starting to plan your next step, so you're not giving up. So what I would hope in this section is that you would think, I'm going to try another approach, or I'm going to see if there's a way to remove the obstacle altogether and me try to minimize how often I go into the living room when he's watching TV. But the whole point of this one is just really preparing yourself, like it's okay if it doesn't happen on the first attempt. Now, let's move into the next step. All right, so now the behavior, let's say what you tried, it didn't work. You've already prepared yourself ahead of time. It might not work and you're not going to give up. So this is where we go back into what I like to call reset, revise, repeat, right? So in this third step, we're resetting. So we're just going to get our grounding again. Do whatever coping or mantra you need to tell yourself in your mind. Like, it's okay, I'm going to figure this out. Like, it's all right that I can get to the bottom of this. This is going to pass. I'm doing the best I can. Whatever you need to do to just reset yourself. Then you're going to revise. You're going to revise your plan. So what we do now is we go back to that step of brainstorming, and you're going to think, okay, what other ideas did I have for brainstorming? What other possibilities did I think caused that behavior? And then you're going to repeat all the steps from there. So perhaps now I realized, okay, I was quiet. I didn't walk in front of him. That didn't seem to do anything. He was still yelling at me when I came into the living room. What's my next approach? So I go back up to the brainstorming section and I say, okay, one of the ideas I had here was that it was right before lunchtime. It tends to happen right before lunchtime. So playing on this hunch that perhaps my loved one is hungry when I come into the room, and this is his way of taking it out, because sometimes things in dementia don't make much sense in our brains, but they make sense in your loved one's brain. Next time I come into the living room, I'm going to have a little snack that I can hand to him as I walk in. So because it's prior to lunch, it's not quite yet lunchtime, I'm going to hand him a snack. And so I walk into the living room and I give him some crackers, or I give him some sliced apples. Then you try it and you see if it worked. And if it didn't work, we get to that step where it's like, okay, what are we going to do if it doesn't work? Perhaps I start to move up lunchtime. If I'm still going to stay on this hunch that it has to do with lunch and hunger, perhaps I'm going to move up lunchtime 30 minutes and see how that goes, right? And then you repeat and you repeat and you repeat. This can help you really figure out what is causing this behavior so that you can hopefully help stop that behavior from happening again. And also, Careblazer, if you find yourself you've run through an entire sequence and it didn't work out, maybe you run through 2 sequences and it didn't work out, and you're already getting a little bit frustrated, it is totally okay to take a break and not even deal with this anymore. You can go back to handling the behavior when it happens. I want to encourage you to take those breaks as needed and stop trying to investigate if you sense that frustration really building. Because if you try to do these steps and brainstorm and go through the steps and change your approach and change your environment from this place of being frustrated and upset that you haven't figured it out yet, your loved one is going to pick up on those nonverbals and energy so much more, and it's just not going to work. So this is next level behavior management. This is okay, I'm going to figure this out. I'm tired of just responding every single time. So you don't have to do this, but it is really helpful if you find that you have you're at a place where you can take some time and patience to figure this out. It's totally okay to take a break from this detective work and then to pick it up in a couple weeks when you're ready. all of that information that you've been gathering, it's still worthwhile. You can still revisit it at any time, and you have all that information to pull from. So it's okay to take breaks. It's not going to ruin this approach. You can repeat these steps as often as you like for as many behaviors as you like. I truly hope it brings you success. I'll be back next week with a very special video. It's an interview I did with a psychiatrist who shares the 5 things any medical provider should be talking about with their patient who has dementia. The 5 important things. So I know you guys are going to love it. I'm excited to share it for you. There's still 1 week of a free sneak peek inside my care course. If you want to access it and learn whatever you can from the sneak peek, go for it. The link is below this video. Careblazer, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do. There's a red button on your screen. If you click it, you can subscribe to the channel. It's totally free. And the reason why it's very special to me is because the more people subscribe to this channel, the easier it will be for other caregivers somewhere in this world to be able to find these videos. All right, thank you.